Now, many Social Security beneficiaries are urging the Biden administration to pass a $300 monthly payment boost.
Despite a consensus in Washington that America needs more investment in our infrastructure, it's been decades since Congress passed a standalone bill to address the issue. This Congress is working hard to remedy that fact.
President Joe Biden has made it clear that he will not let the federal tax rise. Everybody, we have a lot of news to cover in today's video. This is your fourth stimulus check update and daily news report that President Biden was opposed to letting the federal gasoline tax rise at the rate of inflation to help pay for an infrastructure package that a bipartisan group of 21 senators is trying to craft. The gas tax increase was part of an early package that called for $579 billion in new spending on roads, bridges, rail, and public transit. It is unclear if it will make the final cut, and the White House seems intent on making sure it doesn't. White House spokesman Andrew Bates told reporters today, the president has made it clear throughout these negotiations he is adamantly opposed to raising taxes on people making less than $400,000 a year. After the extraordinarily hard times that ordinary Americans endured in 2020, job losses, shrinking incomes, squeezed budgets, he is simply not going to allow Congress to raise taxes on those who suffer the most. Now currently, the federal gas tax stands at 18.4 cents a gallon and has not increased since 1993. It helps pay for highways and mass transit programs around the country. And Congress has traditionally relied on the user pay principle to pay for road and bridge work, but is increasingly relying on general funds to accomplish that task. Ron Wyden, the chairman of the Senate. Now Ron Wyden, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said that indexing the gas tax to inflation was a non-starter for him. Wyden said, it's another hit on working people. And a Senate Democrat also said that the gas hike is a Republican thing, adding that Democrats want to fund an infrastructure package by taxing people that are earning $400,000. Now next week, the White House is expecting to hear from senators that are crafting the infrastructure package. It is scaled back from Biden's proposal, but Democrats are preparing to move other parts of President Biden's agenda in separate legislation that they could pass using a tool that requires only a simple majority for approval. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer described the infrastructure bill being negotiated as a good start. But most Democrats don't believe it does enough on climate or on the amount of revenue raises, and doesn't address priorities like paid family leave. So they will proceed on two tracks that include a reconciliation package going beyond what's in the infrastructure bill. Now everybody, I think Democratic lawmakers should use the budget reconciliation process to pass an infrastructure bill. Negotiations are taking too long. What are your thoughts on this, everybody? Leave them in the comments down below. Now, a recent poll found that many of the Americans needed stimulus money to make ends meet. The survey of just under 4,000 Americans that were asked, if you get a stimulus check, how will you use it? Found that 45% of people plan to use their third stimulus check to pay bills. Additionally, 12% plan to spend it on food or other necessities. Now, among the Americans who didn't need the check to cover essential costs, 19% of them plan to put their stimulus check into savings. Now, many Social Security beneficiaries also received a $1,400 third stimulus check. However, a large amount of Social Security recipients are struggling to scrap by on their monthly benefit checks. And now, congressional leaders have raised the key question on reforming the program. But everybody, how soon can our Democrats and Republicans address Social Security reform? Biden did run on a campaign promise, touting big Social Security changes. Among his proposals is raising the minimum Social Security benefit to 125% of the federal poverty level. He also wants to eliminate rules that reduce benefits for those who also have certain kinds of pension income, known as the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset. Democratic Representative John Larson said that he has also put forward his own proposal, called the Social Security 2100 Act, and that aims to expand benefits while extending the program's solvency into the next century. Both Biden and Larson's plan would require some payroll tax increases, particularly for high earners, with the goal providing bigger benefits to lower earners.
Again, those at the very top get the biggest breaks, and what do we have to show for it? Even our Republican friends are now beginning to admit there's no evidence these tax cuts are being put to work in the economy.
Repeated. Discussions about infrastructure are moving forward along two tracks. One is bipartisan, The second deals with components of the American Jobs and Families Plan, which we will consider even if it lacks bipartisan support. Though I would note, a recent poll showed that President Biden's Infrastructures and Families Plan is broadly popular. Nearly 70% of Americans support President Biden's infrastructure plan. More than 60% support additional support for American families. Now, despite some over-dramatized punditry, the truth is both tracks are moving forward very well, and both tracks need each other. So we want to work with our Republican colleagues on infrastructure where we have common ground. And Democrats believe we have other priorities that the Senate must consider above and beyond a bipartisan infrastructure bill, not the least of which is addressing the urgent challenge of climate change. Yesterday, I convened all 11 members of the Senate Budget Committee to discuss the reconciliation track. And today, I'll convene the group of Democrats negotiating with Republicans to discuss the bipartisan track. We set up the two tracks about a month ago. Each is proceeding along, and the two tracks are parallel, working in concert, progressing well. On voting rights. Now we're here on the precipice of a momentous debate here in the Senate. Last night, I began the process to consider voting rights legislation here on the floor of the Senate next week. The process I used will allow the Senate to consider S1 or compromise legislation that is currently being discussed. In either case, our goal remains crystal clear: protect the right to vote, strengthen our democracy, and put a stop to the tide of voter suppression flooding across our country. We will not consider legislation that does not achieve those objectives. The issue is too important. Republican state legislatures are conducting the most sweeping attack on the right to vote since the beginning of Jim Crow. What is their stated reason for vicious assaults on voting rights? They say it's election integrity. But listen to these policies and tell me if you think they're about election integrity. Reducing polling hours in polling places. What does that have to do with election integrity? Mandating that every precinct, no matter how large or how small, have the same number of ballot drop boxes. What does that have to do with election integrity? It's saying urban areas should have less ability to vote than rural areas. No after-hours voting, no 24 hours voting, no drive-through voting, requiring absentee ballots to be approved by a notary public, making it a crime to give food and water to voters waiting in long lines at the polls, allowing a judge or panel of judges to overturn an election, allowing a